Dr. Chief John Nwodo, who is the President General of Ohanese Ndigbo, is also a former Minister of Information and Culture and former Minister of Civil Aviation. He's a lawyer and an economist. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, speaking about democracy, well, yes, it was Democracy Day last Friday, and lots of perspectives made the rounds and still are, I reckon, about where we are, the principles, ideals of the democratic tenets at that time, speaking about the political environment. What can you say about where we are today in comparison with what happened perhaps in 1993?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain, for having me. Pity I missed you on June 12th. And may I use the opportunity of this interaction to say that I remember Chief Abiola sadly, and may his soul rest in peace. Now, since 1993, we've had various stages of democracy, but sadly, what Chief Abiola lived, fought for, and died for has retrogressed rather than progressed. And we should be ashamed of ourselves as a country. Abiola fought for democracy. His election was annulled unjustly. Our current head of state, in establishing June 12th as a Democracy Day, publicly apologized to Chief Abiola. I would have liked to see that apology be reflected in the growth of policies that would, as it were, cement the things that Chief Abiola fought for. Look at our electoral system to begin with. This is the only country in the world where you go to an election and 1 year after the election, there is still disputation in the courts regarding the validity of the elections. This is the only country in the world where policemen are seen cutting away ballot boxes from polling booths in the course of an election, and no policeman is arrested or disciplined. This is the only country in the world where people don't come out to vote, but the votes announced are far in excess of the people that you photograph, that you see, that go to register in the polling booths. This is the only country in the world where judicial decisions run contrary to evidence as to the number of votes pooled in an election. The net effect of this is that a number of people are lethargic about embracing our democracy. They don't believe in it. Look, the political parties themselves have become like companies owned by shareholders. You cannot, as a young man, decide to make a career of politics and go and test your popularity. Because down the line, the nomination processes are controlled by those who control the party, whether at the national executive or as elected representatives, as governors, as presidents. It is a matter of whose list is going to be respected, not a matter of who is popular with the electorate. Now, in terms of achieving the goals that Abiola's manifesto aspired to, we have failed. Abiola ran an election based on better education, and from better education to better growth of workforce and better employment and better production. This is my interpretation of his manifesto. But down the line, we have failed. Just take a little look at the last couple of years, between 2015 and today. What has happened? Look at our economy. Foreign direct investment has plummeted.
Let me just jump in and ask you, Chief, because I mean, the percentage of lethargic voters may vary the world over, but they are there even in all those biggest democracies, and they always try to see what they can do. We equally have them. But for the electorate here, are we free of blame? Because, I mean, there's a school of thought that says some of these things that politicians do happen because the electorate allowed them to happen.
Look, it is only a madman that hits his head against a brick wall.
Okay, we're going to have to try and we'll hope that that connection will become a lot stronger. But, part of the issues that have been raised in different fora is that the role of the electorate, and that's where we're trying to get at, to see, can't they do or can't we do any better than we are at the moment? Chief, if you're still there, could you go ahead and respond? Okay, we'll try and sort that out in just a moment.
It's interesting that, that issue is raised of the functions of the electorate. Mm-hmm. But what is troubling is that over the years, that figure of the electorate, the lethargic voters, has increased.
Well, Chief, could you go ahead and respond?
Yes, the point I'm trying to make to you is that as a young man in the University of Ibadan, we had military rule. But in spite of the fact that General Gowon was in government, I walked the streets of Lagos demonstrating against General Gowon. We walked with we carried placards against Colonel Ali, who was Minister of Information. The demonstration was tagged Ali must go. When Gowon announced that 1976 was unrealistic, we were all on the streets fighting for Gowon. As low as when I was in class 4 in secondary school, the Abure Accord was breached. And I was in the streets of Enugu wearing a badge, Easterners must get ready. And as young as 17, I entered the Biafran army to fight for Biafra. The point is that today, the atmosphere is militarized. We are not behaving like people who are working under a constitution. And don't forget, even under civilian government, our rulership has been militarized. At the time that General Abubakar handed over, it was to a retired military officer. It was General Obasanjo. And thereafter, it was the brother of a former general and a former vice president, Yaradua, who became president.
So, Chief, before you move on to the next point, if I could just ask you, now, the environment at that time and now, will it then be safe or fair to assume that your generation has made it, okay, I think, well, it's a bit frozen on us at the moment, but when he made the point about the environment at that time, how they, as young men, were able to hit the streets in protest, not once, several times. So the question then will be about the political environments or the environment generally at the time and now.
We asked the same question of our guest on Friday, on June 12th. What's different? Why are the youths of today not as vibrant as they were? He was one of those.
Vibrant being relative, I guess.
Yeah, and he said that, look, even back then at age 15, he was buying newspapers. I said, that doesn't happen at the time. He said, because, and this is where it gets very, very disconcerting. He said, it's because these days, poverty has been weaponized. Now that gave me a serious cause for concern. Okay. Let's see if it's the same thing with Chief Nwodo.
So Chief, I was going to ask you, I mean, why is it different? Because would it be fair to ask that at that time, I mean, maybe this time, your generation has made it very difficult for young people at this time to do the same things that you did? Because, I mean, many of you were in those positions, in leadership positions at very young ages. But today, your generation makes it difficult, near impossible, for the younger ones to do the same things that you did.
Well, I left government so many years ago. I think it's unfair to lump me into that generation of people who don't want to leave government. I have no intention of ever going into politics again in my life. But there is room for the children to participate, but the atmosphere is not there. How do you look at a country that is governed without respect for the rule of law? Look at our military. Look at our service chiefs. In spite of the fact that our state of insecurity remains bad in the country, in spite of the fact that the extant laws, the establishment laws require that you retire from public service at a particular age. A chief of army staff is ordinarily a level 17 officer in the civil service. So is the head of police, so is the head of the Navy. And they are supposed to retire at the retirement age of every civil servant. A chief of army staff is ordinarily responsible to the permanent secretary, Ministry of Defense, and from there to the Minister of Defense and to the president on administrative matters. For command and control matters, he could be answerable directly to the commander-in-chief. But the fact is that the law requires that he retires when he attains retirement age. But under our system, they have been kept functus officio. They have been left in office beyond their retirement age. When you disregard extant laws in a democracy, when you say that it is federal character and federal character is not respected, when you obtain foreign laws and apply them indiscriminately amongst the zones in Nigeria without respect to them. When you go to Egypt and tell every African that he's free to come into Nigeria and register in our national identity office and get a visa when he comes in here, every Boko Haram person can walk into the country through the borders and register. When there is no law in a country, you cannot have civilized civil unrest, which is a legitimate process to communicate. The other day in Katsina, you saw people on the streets trying to burn the posters of the presidents and the governor because the militants were now driving them to the wall. They were almost reacting like militants. But you saw in the United States where people decided to keep a day just to say to the President of America, enough of discrimination against blacks. Do you think this is possible here? You must also say that, you know, in every generation you have a challenge. And the challenge is when the going gets bad, the tough gets going. We must find amongst your colleagues, Chamberlain, people of your age, people who have the courage to stand up like we did in our time and say, this is our time and the destiny is ours to determine. We must be prepared to stand up and say, this is wrong.
Okay.
We can't even talk to government in Nigeria. I am sure that giving me orders in channels to say things that are not palatable to government is probably quaking the establishment of channels today. And it shouldn't, because under our laws, there should be freedom of opinion.
Well, Chief, let me. Okay.
Well, yes, there is. I haven't heard or seen any such quake here at channels, because, I mean, as long as we stick to the ethics of the profession, we have no problems whatsoever with the management, I can tell you.
All right, well, still on that. You said something earlier about the youths, how youths need to come into government and have their say and put their feet down. I remember you sat at a meeting with the leadership of the national party, the ruling party at the time, and you had your say when the youths were not going to be listened to. You raised your voice and you were heard. Do you see that happening in this generation?
I think the thing is all a matter of governance. Every government at its own time sets its own standards. General Gowon not only listened to us, he sent his Minister of Information, who was then Chief Edwin Clark. Chief Edwin Clark came to University of Ibadan, where I was president of Students' Union, and engaged me in a private meeting with S.J. Okudu, the registrar of the university, and asked me, why are you people bringing the nation to this crisis situation? And I said to him, when you were a student in England, you fought for independence of Nigeria. You spoke to the colonial masters who were ruling us the way you liked, because you felt seriously aggrieved. We are supposed to be the tabula rasa of the society. democracy, the uncontaminated segment, which should reflect the true values of what a nation should be. If you gag us, you gag the future of our country. And he said, I agree with you. What are your grievances? Can you write them down so I take them to General Gowon? And we wrote our grievances and he took them down. And when the heat became too much, the Supreme Military Council felt, well, if Gowon was going to give us a bad image, we better get rid of him. And they had a coup and got rid of him and got General Murtala Mohammed. And the minute Mohammed came, he took our blueprint. He began a national probe of public officers and sanitized the system in a manner that brought gladness to us. And he put a date for handover to democratic rule. It was because we were on the streets asking for it. But today, your generation is so delivered. And look at what is happening to us. In spite of the fact that Abiola died for democracy, and democracy was supposed to bring life more abundant for everyone and greater participation, our foreign direct investment has come down from $5 billion to $2 billion. Unemployment rate has risen from 6% to 23%. Inflation rate has gone up from 8% to 11%. GDP growth rate has come down from 6% to 2%, and we survived the depression in the process. Debt to GDP ratio has come from 12% to 25%. Our debt service to revenue profile is risen from 27% in 2014 to more than 60% today. We are leaving you perpetually in debt for the rest of your lifetime, Chamberlain. This is because we are not talking to government. The National Assembly has become a rubber stamp. You take a motion for a loan to them in the morning, they approve it in the evening. It goes through first, second, and third reading. And the question is, what is this loan for? How is it going to revive our economy? How is it distributed to ensure national cohesion? My brother, do you need to be told that oil, that is the mainstay of our economy, is going as a source of revenue? Notwithstanding COVID, you know that the amount of non-oil machines installed in the whole world in the last 3 years are more than the oil machines installed. You know that America has grown its shale oil production to a point that is bound to threaten our oil. You know that Soviet Union and Saudi Arabia are growing their oil in a manner that is bound to threaten our oil. You know that there is a new mineral called perovskite, which a rock, which is going to be able to build a solar panel that will retain power longer than the panel is retaining today, and therefore is going to make
Chief Nwodo, just to put this in, I mean, I know they put out several positions several times too, that some of those loans that we refer to are usually tied to infrastructure development. And year on year, even before this government came in, they also did say, look, for instance, the Chinese loans were tied to specific projects. Yes, there are concerns. There always will be concerns. But those are the issues that they have raised. Okay, I understand that well. Well, that is it for this segment, Chief. Chief John Nwodo is the President General of Ohanaeze Ndigbo. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning, sir.
Thank you for cutting me this short. Thank you for having me.